Well, hello everyone, and welcome to Easy Mini Painting with me, Christopher Ridge. And we're knocking out the alternate sculpts that you can get for Leon Kennedy in the Resident Evil 2 board game. There's some nice variety here. You know, you've got the actual model that comes from the game later on when he gets the bandages on. This one I think is supposed to be more of like a biker jacket, but when I first saw it, my mind immediately went to Resident Evil 4, so I decided to do the Resi 4 color scheme a little bit. And then this one, you know, frankly, I didn't even know this was supposed to be Leon when I first saw it. I do not understand this costume or this sculpt at all. I'm sure somebody will let me know in the comments. I don't really know. But in any case, these are going to be a little bit of fun to paint, so why don't we just knock them out, get on to it, let's get started. So the first thing that I did was I went over a base coat with all of them with Barbarian Flesh, and I figured that will knock out the skin tone pretty easily too. The second thing that I did was I went over all the bases with matte black like I usually do, but I also went over the gloves for all of them, all of the sort of, I don't know, batting gloves, shooting gloves, I don't really know, for all of them, and I went over the boots and the shoes for the Resi 4 one here and the tank top one here. And as you can see, I got a little bit of an imperfection, little tiny oops thing right there. We just got a little bit of black paint onto the pants on this one, but it's no big deal. But I just did that, and I figured it wouldn't be a huge deal to not show that. So that's what I did. Like I said, Barbarian Flesh and then matte black. Now another thing that I've got too is I've got the original miniature that I've painted here, just sort of off and to the side so I can refer to that if I need to, because it is supposed to be, I think, the same sort of color schemes for the police officer right here, except he's got the bandages right there. Why don't we start with him then? And what we'll do is we'll take out some electric blue, and we're going to use that for the uniform. No big deal as to what brush you want to use, just anything that's, you know, small enough to let you work accurately, but not so small that it'd be like any sort of, you know, micro detail brush or anything like that. I'm going to go over the entirety of the pants, so why don't I just start with that. Alright, so there we go. Now we've got his pants nice and covered with that electric blue. We're going to do the same thing with the top part of his uniform. We're just going to, just for the sake of simplicity, we're just going to go over all of it. Don't worry about getting it onto the sort of like pads or the armor padding or anything like that, because we're going to go over that with a darker color, a darker blue color. The only thing is be sure not to go over those bandages. And even if you go over those bandages a little bit too, it's not going to be a huge deal because we're going to go over those with a sort of off-white color later on as well. Alright, and there we go. That just gets the sort of like top of the uniform there and the bottom of the uniform. And like I said, I'm completely leaving off basically the shoulder pad at the top there because we're going to use a dark color for that. I'm going to rinse that brush off. Next up, I'm going to take out some crystal blue, and we'll use that for the armor padding on the police sculpt there, the same way that we did for the, you know, the regular sculpt that came with the core game. We're also going to use that for some other things on some of the other guys, but we'll get there when we get there. So the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to look at the armor padding, and I'm just going to touch up all of that with this crystal blue, so it's just a slightly darker blue color. It might be kind of tricky to get into the sort of like torso here, because his arm is sort of blocking the way a little bit, but just do the best you can. Don't stress yourself out too much over it. Alright, and we're getting the shoulder pads a little bit there too, as you can see. Yeah, this is a little bit trickier than the base sculpt, just because of those bandages and just because the actual stance is maybe a little bit trickier. But no big deal. If you save the alternate sculpts for second, I think that you'll be in good shape, and I think that your painting skills will have gotten a little bit better from then to now. And that's pretty much it. You really just want to get the sort of like top shoulders and the shoulder blades there, and that will be just fine. A little something like that. What we're also going to do with that same color is I'm going to take the sort of like tank top, more casual, dressed down version of Leon right here, and I'm going to go over his pants with this blue color as well. I figured that, you know, he's wearing probably just like some casual police, like, you know, khakis, cargo pants, whatever here. And they're probably just going to have a normal sort of like police color, so we'll use this blue color for that as well. All right, there we go. We've got his pants on that sculpt, and I'm also going to touch up that hat as well, because I think that that hat is probably another, you know, Raccoon City Police Department, just sort of regular police hat. There you go. You just get that hat on there as well. And that'll pretty much be it. Okay, so now I'm going to rinse off that brush completely because we're done with that color. All right, now why don't we move on to some ash gray, and we're going to use that for several things. We'll finally address the Resi 4 looking one there. Heck, why don't we even start with him since we've been kind of neglecting him a little bit. We're going to go over his shirt and his pants. It's probably best to go over the shirt before you go over the jacket because it might be a little bit tricky to get in there in between the jacket there. After the fact, yeah, it would be tricky to paint this shirt here without going over the jacket at all after you've already painted the jacket. So I would recommend doing the shirt there first and then doing the jacket second. And we're also going to do his pants right here because I think that the Resi 4 version of Leon Kennedy has basically just a dark gray pants. All right, there we go. So we just get, you know, the sort of biker-looking one there with the pants and the shirt, and that will be just fine for that. Next up, what we're going to do is we're just going to touch up the belt on the police sculpt right here, as well as the shoes, and that will just match up with the one that we've already done because, like I was saying earlier, I think that the color schemes are supposed to be kind of the same. So there you go. You just get the belt, real simply like that, and then we're going to do the same thing with the shoes. All right, and then we've got the shoes on the police sculpt there. And I'm also just going to touch up the belt on the sort of casual dress down one here too. Because I figured, yeah, that's fine. He's probably wearing just the same color belt that he's using for his regular uniform. There you go. Just get a little bit of a gray onto the belt right there. Next up, we're going to take out some oak brown, and we're going to use that exclusively for the sort of Resi 4 looking one here. I'm sure you can guess what we're going to be using this color for, but why don't we just say it out loud anyway. I'm going to go over the jacket with this oak brown, and that'll give it that nice sort of rustic, rural, sort of backwoodsy color that comes with that iconic costume. Now, I'm sure that somebody's going to tell me down in the comments that, hey, excuse me, but that's not a Resident Evil 4 costume. It's some kind of like biker jacket kind of thing. Well, yes, I know, I understand. Obviously, the big skull on the back is pretty indicative of that. And plus the actual sort of, you know, collar and all that kind of stuff. It doesn't have that sort of fuzzy texture that the Resi 4 jacket has. But you know what? Come on. I can't be the only person who saw this immediately at a first glance and said, oh, that's evocative of the Resident Evil 4 costume. Come on, I can't be the only person who thought that. Yeah, it's just a little tiny thing. So yeah, like I said, I know that it's probably not supposed to be the Resi 4 jacket, but it just reminds me so much of it that I didn't want to just ignore the potential there because I love Resident Evil 4 so much. It's my favorite Resi game. And I think that it is for a lot of people too. So why don't we do a little bit of an homage to it here with this color scheme. All right, the next thing that we're gonna do too with that oak brown is I'm gonna use the same color to paint all of the wood grain on the shotgun. So I'm gonna do this sort of like butt of the shotgun right here, or the stock, or whatever you want to call it. Sorry, I'm not good with gun lingo. I'm not very well indoctrinated into firearms, so sorry about that. But yeah, like I said, I think it's called the stock. So let's go over the stock. All right, and then I'm also going to get the actual pump that sort of that pumps out the empty shells. I think that's how that works. Somebody who knows about guns is going to tell me in the comment section, which is fine. I welcome it. All right, there we go. That just gets the sort of like wood grain finish on the shotgun, as well as the actual jacket itself, and I think that looks pretty spot on, so that's cool. All right, I'm going to rinse that brush off because we're done with that color. Next up, why don't we take out some mummy robes. This is just like an off-white color. It's basically white. It might be it's a little bit different from just regular white. It doesn't really matter. You can just use white or a really, really, really light gray, whatever you prefer. It doesn't matter. The first thing that I'm gonna do before we do detail work is I'm just gonna get the undershirt here of the dress down sculpt, because I think that undershirt is probably just gonna be like a wider gray color. There you go, you just get that sort of white undershirt there for the dress down version of Leon right there. This is just such a weird Leon sculpt. This looks nothing like Leon. I don't like, when I first saw it, I was like, who is that supposed to be? And I had to go to the actual Kickstarter page and look at the different, like pledge rewards to be like, oh, that's an alternate sculpt for Leon? What? Doesn't look anything like him. Whatever, none of my business. So, we're going to use that same color for the sleeves and the bandages on the police sculpt right here. All right, there you go. So now we just got the sleeves and the bandage on the police model. All right, now we're gonna do some detail work with this mummy robes color. We are gonna do the same thing that we did with the original model right here, and that's that we're going to paint all of the studs with this white color. Now there aren't as many that are visible, just because the bandages are sort of covering up a lot of them, but still just sort of look around it and look around for any of the little studs that are hanging around the model, and just dot them like so. And I am using a detail brush right here, so just try to use, a sharp point brush or a detail brush or whatever you're comfortable with. And what you can do too is you can look at the old model just for reference too, because I was thinking, like, are there any studs on the top part of the shoulder, like on either side of the top part of the shoulder? And I don't think that there are, so I'm just going to leave those the way that they are. And you can kind of see some on the bottom side here, but they're kind of hard to get to anyway, and I don't think that they're super noticeable, so don't worry about it. But I'm just going to go ahead and dot them while we're back here anyway, like so. All right, and then we're gonna go over the lettering on the back of his uniform right here. Now, luckily, this kind of detail work is substantially easier when the details are actually raised on the model itself, like the lettering is raised, which is the case here. So it is going to be substantially easier than if you were just having to do it freehand. Just take your time with it. Just a little tiny dot onto your brush at a time. Not a big deal. There you go, so you just got the RPD on the back there. You've got the studs, all over the armor padding, like so. Make that a little bit more prominent. That'll be fine. Okay. All right, and now we're going to move on to the sort of dress down one here. And a similar sort of thing with his hat. I think that his hat has some lettering on it, so we might as well just try to touch that up with a little tiny bit of white. Now this detail is even smaller, so one thing that you might just sort of get used to is lean your hands onto a desk like so. That'll steady your hands substantially better, and also sort of like brace the miniature against your fingers like this. Try not to rub the miniature too aggressively, because you don't want to rub the paint off. And yeah, just sort of look for any sort of way that you can brace your fingers, brace your hand for better detail. There you go, just a little bit like that. In practice, it is... Oh, he's coming off his little sticky tack right here. Ooh, just get it back on there. There we go. All right. In practice, that was proving to be a little bit more annoying than I sort of anticipated. So I would say that if you don't want to worry about the lettering on the hat, I think that you'll be fine without it. One of the things that I did too is I just dipped the tip of my brush into some water before I dipped it into my paint puddle. And that thinned down the paint pretty substantially, which might help you in this case when you're doing these fine details like so. Yeah, kind of looks less like RPD and more like 4PD, but that's okay. That'll be just fine. And the last thing that we're going to do with this white color shouldn't be as difficult. We're just going to get the lining on the Resi 4 jacket right here, and we're going to start with the collar, because I think that that's supposed to be the sort of like white fuzzy, sort of warming fur color. So let's just do white. All right, I just went over the lining of the jacket there too. And we'll also get the base lining of the jacket, and I think that that will be just fine. There you go, that just gets the base of the jacket and the actual jacket collar, and I think that that will be just fine for that. All right, and now we're done with that mummy robes color. Next up, why don't we go ahead and knock out all those firearms, and we'll use some gunmetal for that. I'll start with the shotgun because I think it's going to be a little bit trickier just with all the oak brown that we've already done around it. But yeah, I'm just going to go over the entirety of everything that looks like it should be made of metal, which is basically everything about the gun that we haven't already painted. All right, there we go. So now we've just got the shotgun nice and covered there. That's pretty good. He's almost completely done. We're just going to get the hair and then we're going to be done with him. Which actually is honestly kind of the same for all of them right here. We're gonna get their guns, and then we're gonna get their hair, and then we're gonna do our varnish, or our quickshade rather, and then our varnish, and then we're done. All right. Yeah, and we're almost done. The last thing that I'm gonna do though, before we move on to the hair, is I do want to get the gold badges on the police model there, which shouldn't be a huge deal. I'm gonna use some greedy gold for that. All right, and no big deal. You don't need to stress yourself out over the detail on the badges. Just sort of dot it very lightly and carefully, like so. That's all that you really need to do. Yeah, there we go. That's all that you need to do is you just need to get the badges on either side of the shoulder, like so. That's pretty much it. All right, to bring it all home, we're going to use that desert yellow in order to knock out that Leon Kennedy blonde hair that he's got. I would recommend using an even smaller brush, like a detail brush, for the hair on the dress down model right here, just because of the hat, and there's not a lot of surface area, so you might just be a little bit careful. So I'm just going to use a little tiny detail brush, just to make it a little bit easier. There you go, just a little something like that. Just get the hair underneath the hat. All right. And then I won't use that same brush for the other models because the hair is much more prominent and out in the open, so you don't need to worry as much about the detail. There's that one. All right, and then we're gonna get this one, and then we're gonna do our Quickshade. Oh, and you know what? We are, I think that I will go ahead and get a little bit of blood on those bandages too, because I think the whole thing is that those bandages are supposed to be well, I mean, they're fresh bandages. They're covering up some kind of like fresh wound that he got. I haven't played the Resident Evil 2 game, like the original one, so I don't know the context of him getting these bandages halfway through the game, but I do know that he does get these bandages at some point. And what I'll do for that blood is I'll take out some Crusted Sore, just a little tiny bit. You need barely any at all. And we're just going to really lightly sort of go over those bandages a little bit. What I'll do actually is I'll just take out, why don't we take out kind of a big fat no-name brush so we don't care about too much here. Do something like this with some flayed bristles, nothing too small. And we'll actually just kind of go into our little paint puddle, and we're gonna do a little bit of a dry brushing technique here a little bit. Get a little bit of paint on there, but wipe off most of it so you just got a little bit of brush on there, and then just sort of lightly go over it, just sort of like speckle. Like that. And that way you get the general effect without it being too distracting. And I think that that will be a-okay. I think that that'll be just fine. I think this Crusted Sore is going to work a little bit better because it's not as vibrant red. So it's a little bit, it's a little crusty. It's a little old. There we go, just like that. All right, and then next up, why don't we go ahead and knock out our Quickshade, which we're going to use some strong tone for. So let's shake that up. All right, and again, just take some sort of big fat no-name brush that you don't care about messing up a little bit, and just kind of go over the entirety of each miniature like so.
Yeah, I'll just take this big brush right here, and we'll just go over everything. We'll start with the dressed down one here, because I feel like he's probably got the driest paint right now. Yeah, make sure that the paint is completely dry before you go over it with your Quickshade, but I think that I'm in good shape here right now. I'll tell you what, these Quickshades make it super easy for anybody who wants to get into miniature painting. This stuff is great. You just apply it evenly and carefully like so, and that just gets you automatically all of the shade that you want. It's so easy and so convenient. So there we go, now we've got the dress down one, just like that. He's pretty much completely done. We're just gonna go over the entirety of all of the other ones here. Then I'm gonna let them completely dry, and then after I let them dry, I am gonna go over all of them with a matte varnish as well. I will say that that's optional. I'll say that you don't have to do that if you don't want to, but I like to apply my varnish just because it adds a little bit of a extra layer of protection against the miniature, or for the miniature, and just adds a little bit of lifespan to the miniature itself. But again, it's purely optional, so if you don't want to worry about it, I would say don't worry about it. So yeah, gonna knock out this Quickshade, then the matte varnish, and then we're all done.
Alright, and there you go, everybody. Those are the alternate sculpts for Leon Kennedy from the Resident Evil 2 board game. And as you can see, you've got the original sculpt that comes with the base game to the left there as like a side-by-side comparison. And yeah, these are the alternate ones here. Like I said, the one in the middle, it's not supposed to be the Resident Evil 4 jacket. I know that, I understand that, but it was just so evocative of that I had to just kind of paint it with that color scheme. It's just something that I wanted to do. And again, I will also emphasize too that the lettering on the top of that hat right there might be a little bit difficult for some novice painters, let's say. So if you want to just avoid that, you'll probably be fine. But I decided to go over that just for a little bit of sake, just for the sake of a little bit of extra detail, a little bit of variety. So that's it. Thank you everybody for watching. If you liked the video, go ahead and throw it a like. If you want to see the rest of the alternate sculpts from the Resident Evil 2 board game, you can subscribe to the channel. Maybe I'll knock out the alternate sculpt for Ada and Claire in the next video, but we'll just kind of play it by ear and see how it goes. I won't take up any more of your time though, so thank you so much for watching, everybody. We'll see you next time.